I'm a big Star Wars fan. Okay, huge Star Wars fan here. But there are definitely some problems that Star Wars has been going through for like the last several years. Um, and Star Wars has always been that thing, which is like it's like these big climactic, fun, you know, kind of things where it's like there's lasers, there's armies, there's lightsabers, there's spaceship battles. So it's all kind of just fun and grand. But the underlying story is actually fairly interesting. And that's sort of what builds the entire universe. But the sequels were, at least I personally think, and I think that's a common opinion across the board, were not very good. So there's a lot of problems with sequels. Um, the first one was good. I think The Force Awakens, which they did kind of play it safe with, for being honest. It was a great movie. Don't get me wrong. Like it was a good time. I've watched it multiple times, but they definitely played it safe. And when I mean safe, I just mean if you look back to the you look back to the original trilogy, there's a lot of parallels with that first movie. So the New Hope and sort of how things turn out. And the second and third movie, like there you can tell like if you sit down and watch the movies back to back, you can tell the second and third one there is some lack of direction. So you don't exactly know where the story's going, and that's always just you know that's always you can if the audience can tell it makes it very clear what might happen. So um anyways, so since then there's been multiple shows. There's a show in the middle called The Acolyte, which was probably one of the worst shows I've ever watched before. Um, but it was frustrating to see, being a Star Wars fan. And there was the whole there was Mandalorian and Grogu, or the Mandalorian, like the show, which was good. I think season 1 to 3 were really good. But then what kind of happened was there was like the last 2 or 3 seasons, which were kind of just like not even fixated on the Mandalorian anymore. Not even like on the Grogu character either. It was just like they were kind of just focusing on other side characters. Which, if you know the entire universe, once again, you've watched the shows, or like, sorry, the Clone Wars show and the prequel movies and all that, you kind of understand, you know, um, some of the lore. So then you have more of an interest towards it. But when you don't have all that, and you're just a viewer who's viewing one of these shows for the first time, there isn't really much weight as to some of these characters. So you're like, why are we focusing on other characters that are not even, you know, they're not even the main characters of the show? So I think the last couple of seasons were crap. Uh, Andor was really good. That's one of the shows which I'll talk about later. Is one of the best shows that I've ever watched. Especially that second season. First season is incredible. Second season, I think, tops the first season as well, just in terms of storytelling. It being able to juggle multiple characters, which is so difficult to do, but it makes you intrigued about each, at least majority of the characters, and then it wraps it up all together. And it's like its own package. You don't even have to know anything about Star Wars. You can just focus on those characters, and you'll be set. You'll be good. Uh, so, anyways, there's this movie coming out. They're literally making a movie about the Mandalorian, and there was a Super Bowl trailer which had showed itself a Super Bowl. There's also a trailer before that. It was kind of like a teaser trailer, and I think both of those were extremely weak. I think there was a lot of problems in terms of showing its direction. It just looked very child friendly, and with with a universe like Star Wars, I know it's owned by Disney and everything, but they usually try to have a good balance where, like, people who are nostalgic about this, the older audience and the younger audience, kind of make sure that it can, be for any demographic. But the first two trailers were like really poorly done. Like there was a lot of problems with them in terms of like it just being looking boring and it just looking like any other episode. So with this trailer, this newest trailer, they really pick things up. So like um it just looks adventurous. There's a lot going on in terms of just different characters. And then there's obviously the Empire, and then there's the whole underworld. And usually Star Wars movies have not really explored the underworld, and the shows do. So at least the Mandalorian does, which is a really interesting part of the entire Star Wars universe, which is kind of left unexplored. So it's good to see that they're trying to like go into that and try to tell people like what it's all about. So I do hope they sort of explore that more. Um, so yeah, this character right here, forget its name. He's one of he's a cool ass bounty hunter from the show, so from the Star Wars Clone Wars show, and he I believe will be the main villain, and I think that's cool as hell because what they did with Cad Bane. So if you guys know Cad Bane, he was one of the bounty hunters, which was extremely intelligent and extremely dangerous, and those two things made him so cool because you'd go up against a Jedi, he would go up against a lot of the important characters in the Clone Wars show, and he was incredible. So what they did with him, I believe it was the Boba Fett show, which also was horrendous, by the way, was terrible. They did him dirty. I think they basically killed off the character, which was just awful. But they introduced this new bounty hunter, which might look new to you, but he's from the Clone Wars show as well, and he's really cool. But I forget how much of a role he plays in that show, but he looks menacing here. So I think that would be cool as hell. Obviously the Jabbas are back, and I think that obviously is the whole underworld thing. You can't really have the underworld without the Jabbas. And this is the funniest part. They would barely ever show Pedro's face, but now obviously that sells tickets because it's Pedro Pascal. So now the trailer itself has him without the helmet like several times, and it's actually hilarious because like I think for this movie, I think he's gonna have the helmet off a lot, and I think that's gonna draw in obviously a lot of the crowd, the female audience and stuff. But it's cool as fights. Like there's this one right here against probably one of Jabba's family members. The comedy seems like tame. You know, it seems good. It's not like too in your face. Um, I do wonder if there's gonna be, see, that's that character. I forget his name from Rebels. I do wonder if there's gonna be other characters that they're gonna introduce, or I mean, they've already introduced like Ahsoka and stuff, and the and Ezra and stuff. But I think if those come in like this movie, I think it's gonna be crazy. See how that's gonna play out. And yeah, so I guess we'll see how that turns out. I'm hoping it'll be good. But you know, with these kinds of things, you can't have your hopes up too high because, like I said, especially when you've been disappointed by Star Wars many times, it is difficult to see what they might do and what they might not do.